because tonight we begin a rather earthy journey. You're not slipping into silk sheets or resting beneath a starlit sky tonight. No, tonight you're plopping down onto cold marble surrounded by strangers beneath the humming echoes of ancient Rome. Welcome to the public latrine, where everyone knew your business. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling brave enough, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I'd love to see where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across a worn stone path, sandals slapping against the sun-warmed ground, until you reach a peculiar colonnaded structure. No sign, no symbols, just a faint smell that grows stronger as you get closer. You step inside. It's cooler, shaded, and echoey. And there they are, rows of gleaming marble benches, each with suspiciously identical holes. That's not just a decorative choice. Welcome to the Forca, Rome's public toilet. You shuffle to an open spa. There are plenty, since most locals aren't in the mood for conversation and evacuation. But back in the day, oh, they loved it. You'd sit shoulder to shoulder with senators, slaves, and street performers, each of you doing your business like it was a networking event. This wasn't just plumbing, it was performance. Latrines were social hubs where people gossiped, brokered deals, or debated taxes, all while shifting uncomfortably on chilly seats. And no, there were no partitions. Feeling exposed? That's normal. The flush system wasn't too shabby, though. Beneath your marble perch flows a small stream of water, constantly refreshed by nearby aqueducts meant to carry waste away toward the tower. But here's the catch. It only worked properly if people sat far enough apart and didn't jam the whole system with, say, food scraps or laundry runoff. Yes, people actually did laundry nearby. As you shift slightly, you spot a long narrow trench at your feet filled with running water. That's for wiping. A sponge on a stick known as a tersorium sits in the trough, shared among users. Rinse, wipe, rinse again. Clean is relative. After all, historians still argue whether this setup was hygienic brilliance or a bacterial minefield. Some point to low infection rates, others to Rome's obsession with public baths, which may have masked deeper problems. Either way, the sponge stick has left a legacy equal parts innovative and horrifying. A quirky fact. Emperor Vespasian once texted urine. Public urinals collected liquid waste to be sold to tanners, and launderer ammonia was big business. His son complained, and Vespasian supposedly held a coin to his nose and said, "Money doesn't stink. Pecunia non ola." Charming. You glance around and realize, this isn't an emergency pit stop. This is a community center. Stone-carved graffiti marks the walls, mostly about love, politics, or how bad the soup was last night. You wonder who sat in your very seat. A baker. A spy. Julius Caesar himself. Probably not had palace toilets. But still, as you prepare to leave the premises, a final Roman courtesy. No flushing mechanism. You just hope gravity and flowing water do their jobs. And maybe don't look down the hole. Two long rats were known to pop up occasionally, no doubt equally confused. You step outside into the warmth again, your sandals somehow heavier, your soul slightly wiser. You squint into the sun as it glints off the Nile. The scent of lotus and baked clay hangs in the air. Palm trees sway lazily, and somewhere in the distance, a priest is chanting to Horus. You've arrived in ancient Egypt, land of pyramids, papyrus scrolls, and surprisingly elegant toilet arrangements. You wander through the modest adobe home of a middle-class scribe, walls etched with protective symbols, floors cool, beneath your toes. Tucked discreetly behind a lion curtain is a curious sight, a squat ceramic pot with delicate painted patterns of reeds and birds. This, my friend, is your throne for the evening. The chamber pot was the go-to device for indoor toileting in Egypt. Terracotta, simple, functional, often paired with sand or ash to mask the smell. You crouch over it. Not cities weren't exactly built for comfort, and you can't help but notice the quiet dignity of it all. Of course, wealthier Egyptians had more elaborate setups. Archaeological digs at Amarna unearthed limestone toilet seats, flat, square slabs with a hole in the middle positioned above pits. Scholars still argue whether these were used by the royal family or their servants, but either way, they seem oddly modern. One even had traces of worn padding. Luxury, by 1300 best standards. Out back, in the garden, you spot a different kind of pie. Surprise, a pile of animal dung mixed with straw. That's not just waste heats. Fuel. Ancient Egyptians were nothing if not resourceful. Crocodile dung, however, well, that has another reputation. Yes, historians have debated whether women used crocodile dung mixed with ani as a contraceptive. We won't linger there too long for your sake and mine. But let's just say ancient pharmacology was imaginative. You step outside and walk along the irrigation canals. Peasants working the fields wave as you pass. They likely use the fields themselves as open-air toilets, and the waste human and animal returned to the earth. It wasn't glamorous, but it closed the cycle. Ancient organic farming at its smelliest. Interestingly, many Egyptian gods had specific associations with bodily functions. The god set, for instance, was sometimes linked to uncleanliness and chaos often invoked in purification rituals post-relieving oneself. Not that every potty break turned into a spiritual journey, but still they took it seriously. And here's the real twist, in Thebes, some wealthier homes included what we might call a toilet room with a drainage system beneath. Water would flush waste into a covered pit or trough. Did it smell? Probably. Did it work? Surprisingly, yes. Historians still argue whether this counts as the earliest indoor plumbing or just a glorified hole with aspirations. You crouch once more behind the curtain. Pot beneath you, walls flickering from the light of an oil lamp. Outside, the Nile hums, and a breeze carries in the scent of fresh dates and fish stew. And just before you're done, your gaze settles on a small basket beside you woven reeds, filled with smooth pebbles and palm fronds. No sponge on a stick here. Just tactile improvisation. As you tiptoe away, careful not to spill, you realize this was perhaps the most dignified poop of your life. Even if it involved sand, pottery, and ancient dung lore. You blink, and the desert melts into stone-bright frescoes, bull horns, and the soft lap of waves near a distant port. You're now on the island of Crete, inside the palace of Knossos, birthplace of the Minoan civilization and home to one of the world's earliest flushing toilets. That's right. You're about to relieve yourself like royalty. The palace is sprawling labyrinthine, even. You follow red-painted columns and winding stairs until you reach a chamber not far from the queen's quarters. Inside, a large clay seat with a smooth, oval opening. Below it, hidden from view, runs a drain that slopes downhill. You pause, incredulous. This isn't a bucket. It's plumbing. Scholars still argue whether the Minoans invented the flush toilet or merely adopted ideas from earlier Mesopotamian systems. But there's no doubt, they had running water, terracotta piping, and clever use of gravity. You're sitting on one of the earliest examples of a system designed to whisk waste away with flowing water. At this point in history, that's like discovering an ancient smartphone. As you ease into position, you can hear the echo of trickling water somewhere below, artificial streams diverted to wash the waste downhill into a covered pit or garden trench. The setup relied entirely on gravity, so no magical levers or buttons. But still, it's sophisticated. A quirky touch. The bathroom walls here were likely decorated bright paintings of dolphins, spirals, or ceremonial scenes. You imagine finishing your business while gazing at a sea nymph prancing through waves. You wonder if she's judging you. The Minoans took water seriously. Their entire palace is crisscrossed with pipes, drains, and catchment systems. Rainwater collection, bathtubs, wash basins. Archaeologists believe they even had hot and cold water delivered via separate channels. Some modern apartments don't even have that. And here's where things get even weirder. They built these marvels around 1700 to 6 centuries before the Romans, long before fancy marble latrines. And then, it all disappeared. Historians still argue what wiped out the Minoans' volcano. Tsunami. Invading Mycenaeans. But their plumbing legacy quite literally got buried. It would take over 1,000 years for toilets this advanced to return. You shift slightly on the clay seat and imagine a Minoan priestess in a layered lion robe doing the same, perhaps thinking about bulls, or oracles, or what's for dinner. And in that moment, across 3 millennia, you feel an unexpected kinship. Everyone poops heaven in palaces. You step outside and stroll past frescoes of dancers and double axes, heading toward a shaded portico where water once pooled in decorative fountains. You glance back toward the queen's quarters, wondering if she had the better toilet. Maybe hers was padded, with imported goat fleece, perhaps. As you leave the palace grounds, a final odd detail sticks with you. Archaeologists have found elaborate drains and channels beneath the toilets, some still intact, capable of diverting rainwater to clean the area after use. It wasn't just a seat, it was a system. You walk down the stone path, past olive trees and bleeding goats, and suddenly realize, the Minoans may not have left a written record we can fully decipher, but their toilets. Those speak volumes. You step off the palace stones and land straight into the orderly bustle of ancient China where elegance, practicality, and clay converge in the art of, well, letting it all out. The air smells of steamed rice and faint incense. Silk sleeves brush against your arms as you make your way through a courtyard shaded by bamboo and stone lions. You've arrived at a household in the Tang dynasty, around the 8th century. And yes, even in a land of pottery, brushwork, and porcelain, people still had to go. You duck into a side room dimly lit, window covered with waxed paper, and behold your destination, a portable clay toilet, neatly shaped like a high-sided stool, with a lid sitting nearby. Elegant in a way only ancient sanitation can be. These weren't mass-produced hunks of ceramic. They were glazed, sometimes painted, and often reused for generations, usually paired with a basket of sand or ash to mask odors. You squat carefully, and the cool rim presses into your thighs. You realize there is a quiet dignity in this minimal setup. But not everyone had clay pots. In wealthier households or imperial compounds, toilets were more sophisticated, raised platforms over pits, with rudimentary water channels. Some even had early versions of toilet paper, thin bamboo sticks smoothed and polished. And yes, they were washed and reused. Gently. Historians still argue whether the stick wiping method was hygienic or borderline medieval. But context is key. Paired with careful rinsing and the use of antiseptic herbs like mugwort or peachwood, it wasn't as terrifying as it sounds. Still, you grip the polished stick with some hesitation. A quirky fact. The Chinese imperial court under the Song dynasty would later invent the world's first recorded mention of paper specifically for wiping by the tens of thousands of sheets. Records show that in the 14th century, the imperial family ordered special toilet paper, some sheets even perfume. No sand, no sticks. Just luxury. As you exit, a servant quietly takes the clay pot away to be cleaned. You glance over your shoulder grateful, but maybe also mildly embarrassed. There's something very human about watching someone carry off your business in a painted jar. Outside, you stroll past public outhouses tucked behind market stalls. These were simple wooden platforms with holes, often suspended over pits, and cleaned daily if you were lucky. Night soil collector says, that's a job Tile would cart it away to fertilize fields. You pause under a ginkgo tree, listening to cicadas drone. In rural areas, chamber pots were still common for centuries, used in the middle of the night and emptied each morning. It wasn't glamorous, but it were. And here's a fun twist. Some early Chinese texts contain polite euphemisms for the act itself. Relieving the self, visiting the clean chamber, or simply sitting with stillness. You like that one? Even Confucian etiquette books had thoughts on toilet conduct. One such guideline. Never speak of bowel movements in the presence of elders. So maybe don't tell grandma what you just did. You leave the compound feeling lighter not just physically, but existentially. Ancient China had a way of turning even the base necessities into moments of quiet reflection. And bamboo sticks, apparently. A gust of clean mountain air brushes your face as you step into a land of quiet rituals and impeccable hygiene. Ancient Japan. The wooden beams creak beneath your feet, and a koi pond gurgles somewhere nearby. A crane flutters past a rice paper screen. But tonight's destination isn't a tea house. It's the toilet. You shuffle along polished floorboards of a countryside home during the Han period, around the 10th century. Everything is crafted with precision, smooth cypress walls, tatami mats, bamboo blinds. And nestled in a discreet corner of the home lies the household's binjo, the Japanese toilet. It's not flashy. A simple, squat platform sits above a trench or clay pot, often set a few steps away from the house to maintain cleanliness and harmony. But it's the quiet reverence of the space that catches your attention. There's a small bowl of cedar shavings beside you. A pine sprig. The smell is earthy, not offensive. Here, cleanliness wasn't just about hygiene. It was about spiritual purity. Shinto beliefs placed immense value on ritual cleansing. Musuja and waste, by extension, was something to be respectfully managed, not just discarded. You crouch above the hole awkwardly, at first, and take a deep breath. The cool air flows upward, the wooden floor cold underfoot. You hear nothing but wind in the trees. Even your bathroom break is accompanied by nature's soundtrack. A quirky detail. Some aristocratic homes kept a small gong or bell inside the toilet chamber. When you were finished, you'd gently strike it to summon a servant for cleaning. Imagine having to ring a chime to announce your completion. Dignified. Maybe embarrassing. Almost certainly. Historians still argue whether early Japanese toilets were influenced by Chinese models or developed independently. Given Japan's cultural blending across centuries, the answer might be both. But by the Edo period, things got more advanced. Multi-compartment toilets were common, separating urine and solid waste for use in fertilization. Yes, they were composting centuries before it was trendy. And here's a delightful bonus. The Japanese developed what's probably the earliest recorded toilet sandals wooden geta specifically for the toilet room, never worn elsewhere. A polite way to contain germs and social fox pass. You stand, refreshed, and make your way through the moss garden outside. In rural villages, public toilets were often placed beside rice paddies, perfect for collecting valuable fertilizer. Farmers made deals with neighbors to borrow their household waste. Yes, poop had economic value. That gives a whole new meaning to liquid gold. You peek into a monk's quarters at a nearby temple and spot a similar setup, wooden, Spartan, clean. Before meditating, monks often performed full-body cleansing rituals. A dirty body was considered a dirty mind. And the toilet. It was part of the path to enlightenment. As you settle onto a garden bench, a breeze tickles the wind chimes. Somewhere, someone is gently raking gravel into perfect lines. You, however, are remembering a wooden hole and a pine sprig. Oddly serene. The sun blazes over a dusty, sun-baked plain as you find yourself amid the ancient city-states of Mesopotamia, cradle of civilization, where mud brick walls and ziggurats tower above bustling markets. You're heading into a humble clay room, tucked beside a courtyard, known to some as a bathroom. The walls, sun-dried bricks, are warm to the touch. You step over a low threshold and settle yourself into a small clay hole Mesopotamian style. It's simple, basic, but with hints of innovation. The hole sits inside a rectangular chamber, designed to keep the smell away from living areas. These early toilets, sometimes connected to rudimentary drainage systems, canals carved from clay or stone, carried waste into cesspits or fields. A small bucket of water sat nearby for rinsing. No fancy flushing here, but a glimpse into the art of waste management. Historians still debate how widespread such systems were. Some suggest only the wealthy enjoyed dedicated toilets. Others believe communal latrines existed in larger cities like Babylon. Either way, it's clear Mesopotamians took sanitation seriously, even if it smelled less than pleasant. A quirky fact: some clay tablets mention toilet attendants, people hired to maintain these spaces and remove waste. Yes, even back then, some jobs were less glamorous than others. Mesopotamian laws also addressed public defecation. The famous Code of Hammurabi included fines and punishments for those who relieved themselves in inappropriate places, a reminder that even 4,000 years ago, doing your business had social rules. Outside the city walls, farmers used human waste as fertilizer, a natural cycle helping crops grow in the otherwise arid land. It wasn't pretty, but it was effective. And here's a curious detail: some scholars argue that the Sumerians' obsession with cleanliness may have inspired the first soap-like substances, made from animal fats and ashes. A messy business, indeed. As you stand and wipe with a piece of cloth, you feel a connection to the countless others who've done the same on this same clay for millennia. From royal scribes to street vendors, all equalized in this basic human act. You exit into the bright sun, the call to prayer echoing faintly in the distance. The city hums with life, but for a moment, everything has paused, the most private moments of life made strangely universal. You slip quietly through the dusty streets of the ancient Indus Valley civilization, stepping carefully on the smooth, well-laid bricks of Harappa. The sun beats down, but the coolness of the city's famous drainage system beckons you toward a small, neatly arranged toilet cubicle attached to a modest home. This isn't just any old hole in the ground. It's a marvel of urban planning, complete with a seat fashioned from fired brick, positioned over a covered drain that runs alongside the city's main streets. The Indus people were among the first to build toilets connected to a comprehensive sewer system, a civilization committed to cleanliness. You lower yourself onto the brick seat, feeling the smoothness beneath your hands. The waste falls into the drain below, where water, either rainwater or wastewater from bathing, flows gently, whisking it away from the living quarters. Ingenious. Historians still argue about the exact function of certain pipes and channels. Some suggest that the drains also served to collect rainwater for reuse, while others propose they were simply early attempts at sanitation engineering. A quirky bit: archaeologists found remnants of small cubicles lined up next to each other, suggesting communal latrines. You can almost imagine neighbors chatting quietly while attending to their business. Privacy. Not really a concept here. Surrounding you, the streets boast covered drains running along the sides, complete with stone slabs that could be removed for cleaning. It's remarkable urban sophistication for a society over 4,000 years ago. And then there's the mysterious pipe. Its purpose is debated. Some believe it was for ventilation, others think it helped flush waste with fresh water. Either way, it shows the Indus engineers were thinking about the comfort and health of their citizens. You glance around the orderly grid of homes and public spaces. The city's planning suggests a society that prized order and hygiene. After all, the Indus Valley sanitation system was arguably the most advanced of its time. As you stand to leave, a gentle breeze carries the faint scent of jasmine and dust. You feel lighter, not just because of the toilet's function, but because you've glimpsed a civilization that took pride in the dignity of daily life's necessities. You find yourself on a sun-drenched marble step in ancient Greece, perhaps somewhere in Athens or Corinth. Philosophers linger nearby, debating the nature of reality and ethics. And here you are, perched on a humble clay chamber pot, contemplating not only your business but also the meaning of life itself. The Greek Magula simple, portable clay pot was the toilet of choice for many. Not fancy, but effective. Unlike the Romans' public latrines, the Greeks valued privacy, preferring to do their business behind closed doors or in discreet corners. You grip the pot, feeling its roof surface against your skin, and let your thoughts wander as a passing scholar mutters something about Plato and the soul. Even here, in these moments, the human condition reveals itself. Historians still debate how common indoor toilets were in Greek homes. While the wealthy may have had private latrines connected to drainage systems, the average citizen often used communal facilities or simply relieved themselves outdoors. A quirky historical tidbit: in some Greek temples, priests maintained special sanctuaries where visitors could purify themselves after relieving the self, reinforcing the connection between bodily functions and spiritual cleanliness. You glance at a nearby graffiti-inscribed wall. Ancient Greek graffiti was surprisingly similar to modern-day bathroom humor: love notes, insults, and crude jokes etched in stone. It seems pie humor is truly timeless. Another fascinating detail: the Greeks sometimes used olive oil to clean themselves after toilet use, applying it to the skin to both cleanse and moisturize. Not your typical toilet paper, but effective in its own way. As you finish, you hear the faint strumming of a lyre and a voice reciting poetry. It's a reminder that life, even in its most mundane moments, was steeped in art and philosophy. You rise, cradle the pot carefully, and step outside. The sun warms your skin, and the gentle hum of the agora invites you back into the rhythms of ancient city life. Despite all the high-minded talk of forms and ideals, here in the humble act of toileting, you find a surprisingly intimate connection to those who came before you. You shiver as a cold wind whips across a bleak Scandinavian fjord. Snowflakes drift slowly down, blanketing the rugged landscape in white. You find shelter in a simple wooden-hued Viking longhouse, with a hearth crackling nearby. But your destination is a cramped wooden outhouse perched precariously over a shallow trench outside. You gingerly push open the door, stepping inside to face the notorious Viking latrine. A simple bench with a hole cut in it. No frills. Just functionality. You settle yourself, the chill of the rohewn wood biting through your clothes. Archaeologists digging near Viking settlements have uncovered these outhouses and, surprisingly, well-preserved waste deposits beneath, offering a treasure trove of information about Viking diets, health, and even last night's dinner. Maybe fish stew or roasted boar. The thought is both fascinating and faintly disconcerting. Historians still argue how Vikings balanced hygiene with their rugged lifestyle. Some suggest that winter made outdoor toileting a bitter challenge, leading to creative but not always sanitary solutions inside the home. A quirky fact, some Viking outhouses were built on stilts over rivers or the sea, so waste dropped directly into the water below, carried away by tides. Efficient, if somewhat unhygienic. You hear the distant howl of a wolf, and for a moment, you imagine a Viking warrior doing his business while planning raids or poetry. The juxtaposition of brutal survival and poetic sensibility is strangely humbling. You step outside, the cold biting your cheeks, and marvel at the contrast. A fierce people who built longships to cross oceans, yet still had to contend with basic bodily functions in frigid, exposed latrines. And just as you prepare to leave, you notice a simple carving on the wooden door, a serpent entwined around a spear. Maybe a charm against evil spirits lurking in the dark. Or maybe just graffiti from a bored Norseman. You laugh quietly to yourself, stepping back into the warmth of the hearth-lit hall, glad that at least you don't have to brave that cold latrine again anytime soon. You find yourself deep in the lush greenery of the Mayan jungle, where towering ceiba trees stretch toward the sun and the hum of cicadas fills the air. The scent of copal incense drifts softly from a nearby temple, mixing with the earthy aroma of damp leaves and stone. Here, in the heart of the ancient Maya civilization, even the simple act of toileting was steeped in ritual. You step cautiously behind a sacred stone structure, a squat stone seat carved from limestone. Unlike the communal latrines of some civilizations, the Maya preferred privacy, or at least a quiet, natural setting surrounded by the jungle. You lower yourself and hear the distant calls of howler monkeys, a curious audience to your business. But this wasn't just a matter of convenience. The Maya believed that bodily waste, like many things in life, was connected to the spiritual world. Offerings of food, jade, or incense might accompany latrine use, as a way to honor the gods or ask for forgiveness for the less pleasant parts of life. Historians still debate how widespread these rituals were, but many Maya cities had drainage systems directing waste into pits or nearby waterways. It was practical and spiritual intertwined. A quirky fact, Maya priests sometimes carried special sticks used for personal hygiene, often made from carved wood or bone. The idea of reusing such tools might make modern sensibilities cringe, but for them, it was a matter of cleanliness and respect. The jungle canopy filters dappled sunlight onto moss-covered stones. As you finish, you notice ancient glyphs nearby, some depicting scenes of daily life, others mysterious ritual acts. Even the gods had to deal with the messy realities of human existence. You stand and brush leaves from your clothes, feeling a connection to the countless ancestors who sat on this very stone, beneath the same canopy, performing the same necessary act. Leaving the jungle behind, you carry with you a sense of reverence for how ancient people combined the sacred with the everyday, even in their toilets. You find yourself high in the Andes, perched among the soaring terraces of the Inca Empire. The thin mountain air is crisp and clear, and the sun warms your skin as you navigate the steep stone pathways winding through ancient agricultural fields. Here, practicality and ingenuity merge in a unique way even when it comes to toilets. You approach a modest stone ledge built into a terrace wall. This is no ordinary outhouse. It's a communal drop zone, where the Incas cleverly harnessed gravity and the natural slope of their terraces to manage waste. You balance carefully, feeling the roof stone beneath you, and release your burden, knowing it will be carried swiftly downward by the incline. The Incas lacked elaborate plumbing but excelled at maximizing their mountainous terrain. Waste would fall through chutes or directly into designated pits below, often located far from living quarters and water sources to prevent contamination. Historians still argue how widespread these drop zones were and whether they served specific groups or the entire community. Some evidence points to shared facilities near farming terraces and road networks. A quirky fact, Inca workers along the famous Capac and Arroyo Road sometimes used pourable chamber pots, allowing them to Travel long distances without leaving waste behind on sacred paths. And here's a practical twist. Human waste was collected and used as fertilizer, enriching the soil of the terraced fields and supporting the empire's vast agricultural needs. This sustainable practice kept crops thriving in challenging environments. You admire the cleverness of this system, realizing that in a civilization built on stone and mountain, even waste management was an engineering feat. As you step away from the ledge, the majestic peaks surrounding you remind you that, no matter how advanced a society, some things remain universal. Gravity, altitude, modesty, all negotiating in the simple act of going. You feel a sense of connection to the Incas, whose practical wisdom turned mountains into fertile lands and waste into nourishment. You trudge up a winding stair inside a towering medieval castle, its stone walls thick and cold beneath your fingertips. Torches sputter along the corridor, casting flickering shadows. You reach a cramped chamber tucked into a corner, a garderobe with a medieval version of a toilet. You squeeze onto the narrow wooden seat, its hole carved roughly into the wood, positioned directly above a vertical shaft that drops waste down the castle walls. Below, the moat or the courtyard waits silently. These latrines of doom weren't exactly sanitary or odor-free. The smell was infamous, a blend of decay and damp stone. But the design was practical. Gravity did the dirty work, and the castle's defenders below had to hope that no one wandered beneath at an unlucky moment. Historians still argue how often these waste shafts were cleaned or repaired. Some believe the towers were strategically placed to minimize foul smells, while others think the rotting stench was simply part of castle life. A quirky detail, some garderobes had narrow seats shaped like animal heads or carved with crude faces, perhaps to add a touch of humor or to ward off evil spirits. Outside the walls, servants collected night soil from cesspits and garderobes, carting it away under cover of darkness for use as fertilizer in nearby fields. It was a dirty but essential job. You hear the faint clang of armor and distant voices in the great hall. Knights feast, jesters perform, and above them, nobles drop their business into the abyss. The juxtaposition is stark. You shift awkwardly, grateful that your modern toilet is indoors and flushed with water rather than dropping into a well. Yet, in this stone tower, you feel the echoes of countless others who endured this humble spot, a necessary inconvenience for those who lived behind thick stone walls. As you leave, a draft chills your back, reminding you that in medieval times, even the act of toileting was a test of endurance. The wind howls across vast open plains as you unzip a fur-lined flap and step into a nomadic tent, somewhere on the sprawling steppes of Central Asia. The ground beneath your feet is soft earth, and the flicker of a small oil lamp casts shadows on animal pelts. Here, the toilet is as mobile as the people themselves. You find a small, simple hole dug just beyond the tent's perimeter, or temporary latrine for the night. A wooden shovel leans nearby, ready for quick cover-up. Privacy is limited, and the elements are your only companions. Nomadic peoples valued portability and practicality above all. No plumbing, no fixed facilities, just the earth itself. You squat carefully, mindful of the wind's direction and the rustle of nearby horses. Historians still debate how nomadic communities balance sanitation with mobility. Some suggest they had designated spots, rotating campsites regularly to prevent contamination. Others point to the use of natural topography, rocks, ridges, and valleys to manage waste. A quirky fact, some nomads crafted pourable wooden boxes with holes, early chamber pots that could be emptied at designated sites. This ensured camps remained clean and waste didn't attract predators. The wind picks up, carrying scents of wild herbs and distant fires. You cover your business swiftly, then use a handful of dry grass to clean yourself, a natural solution. You imagine the challenges of toileting in freezing winters or scorching summers, with only tents and shrouds of mist. It's a testament to human adaptability. Beyond sanitation, these practices helped protect water sources and grazing lands. Keeping campsites hygienic was vital for survival. You pause outside the tent, watching the stars wheel overhead. The vastness of the steppe reminds you that, for nomads, even the simplest acts connect deeply to the land. As you zip the flap closed, you feel gratitude for the comforts of permanence, but also respect for those who embraced the wild with nothing but a shovel and the earth beneath them. You find yourself in a lavish 17th century French chio, the scent of rosewater lingering in the air, and chandeliers casting soft golden light. Behind heavy velvet drapes lies the aristocrat's privy, a far cry from the rustic latrines you've encountered. You carefully lower yourself onto a wooden chair, concealing a porcelain chamber, potent object of both necessity and refinement. Around you, the room is scented with rose petals and lavender sachets, intended to mask any unpleasant odors. French nobility were famous for their obsession with scent and elegance, even in the toilet. Historical accounts reveal that rose petals were regularly scattered in privies to create a perfumed illusion of cleanliness. You smile at the thought of sweet-smelling waste. Historians still debate whether these fragrant additions genuinely improved the air or simply heightened the sense of decadence amid the inevitable. A quirky detail, chamber pots sometimes came adorned with gilded handles and intricate paintings. Owning one was a status symbol as much as a convenience. You lift the heavy wooden lid, noting the delicate craftsmanship. Beneath lies a ceramic vessel, often emptied by discreet servants. It wasn't glamorous, but the rituals surrounding toileting were a dance of etiquette and privacy. Outside the chamber, public privies were rare. Most waste was handled privately. The French aristocracy even had specific terms and euphemisms for bathroom activities, going to powder one's nose being one of the more polite phrases. You dab a scented handkerchief across your fingers, reflecting on the strange balance of refinement and reality. Behind gilded doors, human needs remain the same. As you exit the chamber, you catch the faint scent of bergamot and musk. You imagine the whispered conversations and guarded secrets shared in such rooms. In this world of powdered wigs and silk stockings, even the act of toileting was elevated to art. You stumble quietly through the gaslit streets of Victorian London, clutching your precious porcelain chamber pot as the night swirls around you. The fog curls thick, muffling footsteps and whispered gossip. This is the era of night soil collectors, who earned their living by emptying chamber pots under cover of darkness. You approach a narrow alley, careful not to drop your pot, and await the arrival of the night soil car, a grimy horse-drawn wagon where workers in heavy coats scoop up the waste to transport it outside the city. Victorian sanitation was a patchwork of progress and fill. Though sewer systems were beginning to develop, many relied on these midnight runs to keep homes somewhat livable. The name night soil itself evokes the grim reality of handling human waste by moonlight. Historians still argue how much these collectors improved urban hygiene. While their work was vital, the dangers of disease and contamination remained high. A quirky fact: some city dwellers took pride in decorating their chamber pots painted scenes, initials, or even witty inscriptions. A personal touch in a rather unglamorous routine. You think about the strange economy built around human waste, how farmers outside the city valued this gold as fertilizer, sustaining crops for a growing population. The chill in the air sharpens your senses as you hand over your pot, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude for modern plumbing. You glance at gas lamps flickering, the muffled ladder from taverns, and the shadows cast on cobblestones. Life in Victorian London was a mix of progress and struggle, where even the simplest bodily functions were deeply entwined with social and technological change. As you head home, the night whispers softly, and you realize how far humanity has come and how much remains constant. Hey, you've made it all the way through our sleepy tour of ancient toilets. Thank you for sticking with me on this oddly intimate journey. Now, as you settle deeper into your own cozy space, let your thoughts drift slowly away from marble seats and clay pots, from the whispering bamboo forests of Japan to the misty steppes of nomads under the stars. Imagine the soft, steady hum of a cool breeze through ancient trees, the gentle rush of water carrying away the remnants of yesterday, the quiet dignity with which countless people, across thousands of years, have attended to their most basic needs. This is a reminder that beneath the grandeur of civilizations, behind the towering pyramids and sprawling palaces, lies a shared human experience, the simple, necessary act of caring for the body and the land. Whatever time and place, we all have found ways, sometimes elegant, sometimes crude, to navigate this essential part of life. The faint echoes of those rituals remind us of our connection to the past, and to each other. As you breathe slowly, the faint light dims softly, carrying with it the lingering sense of ancient woods, rose petals, and distant oceans. Let your mind float gently among these soothing images. You're safe here. Your body is cared for. And as night deepens, so does your peace. Rest easy knowing you're part of a long, winding story, one that's both humbling and strangely comforting. Now, let your eyelids grow heavy. The world softly fades away. Sweet dreams.